Welcome inside episode 635 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan on the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains, and Ottawa Senators training camp continues on day 2 with a legend in the building.
A Hall of Fame legend in the building, Ross. And with that, we also got to see our first looks at line combinations from training camp.
We'll get into all that. Plus, what does Derick Brassard have to do to make this team? All that's coming up, and it's brought to you by BetOnline. More props, odds, and lines than ever before. Visit betonline.net. It's where the game starts. And now the show starts. This is the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.
Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Senators your first listen on this Friday, September 23rd. We are free and available on all platforms, including on YouTube, where the best way you can help the show grow is to like every video by simply clicking the thumbs up and subscribe to the Locked On Senators channel. We have more great preseason content coming exclusively on YouTube on top of the 5 audio podcasts you are going to get each and every day until the regular season begins. I mean, we'll continue it and add the postcast as well. Pilsy, praise Alfie.
Praise Alfie. The Hall of Famer is in the building. We saw the signs, Ross, when the 3 team names were Team Phillips, Team Neal, and Team Alfredsson. Now he's in the building. It's just great to have him around, honestly. We're still hoping there's more to this than just him being back in the building. Hopefully there's some sort of affiliation or partnership or job for him with the Ottawa Senators. But hey, small steps. This is huge having him back in the building.
Yeah, now we saw Chris Phillips was behind the bench looking like a team dad with the Tim Hortons cup. And Giroux was in front of him. And I think it was Steve on Sens, but he pointed out they played in the NHL at the same time for 7 seasons. It's wild to think back that far, whether it's that Phillips stretched his career a little long or how long Claude Giroux has been a part of an NHL team. So excited to see Daniel Alfredsson behind the Sens bench in what will be a scrimmage later today. And looking at Team Alfredsson on the roster, Pilsy, it's just natural that the captain, Brady Tkachuk, so happens to be in this group. So we made so much of a lunch they had together. Now you're going to get to see them interact a little bit. I'm sure there'll be a photo or two that comes out. So awesome to see another step in the right direction for this franchise, bringing back the only modern day player who leads them in so many categories. I know Chris Phillips has his number up in the rafters as well, but it's the house that Daniel Alfredsson built, really is, the CTC.
Absolutely. Yeah, he is without debate the greatest Ottawa Senator of all time. So having him just back in the fold, back in the mix is very exciting for Sens fans.
Yes, great way to start the day and take you into a weekend that will include Sens hockey. Pilsy, we don't have the rosters just yet, but the Ottawa Senators will travel to Toronto after their practices today, and they will take on the Leafs not once, but twice. The first group will play at 1 p.m. Eastern, and the second group at 7 p.m. in the heart of enemy territory. I'd imagine that most guys get to play. They're obviously not going to have any double dips. So when you look at how many guys are in camp, 59, doing some quick math, you're probably going to have 40 some play.
Probably 46.
Is there any one guy, and not a guy like the top end guys, who might be pushing to make their name known? We'll get into lines and how they are more or less set of who's going to make the NHL team, but who's someone that you're hoping really impresses right off the bat?
I'll go with Derick Brassard. This is a guy that he's on a one-way contract. He's no longer eligible to be brought up and down like he has been pretty much his whole time in Ottawa. He was not on a pairing with Nick Holden, which kind of raises some eyebrows. He was on a pairing with Jacob Bernard-Docker, who will likely start the year in Belleville. So that kind of gives me a sense that he doesn't have the inside track on being a bottom pair defenseman in the NHL. So he didn't have, Bransstrom didn't have good opportunities in training camps in years past. I know it was last year, right? Where did he break his hand or he
Oh,
had some
COVID.
sort of.
No, COVID was the year before, right? When he was
Yeah,
back from Switzerland, he had to quarantine twice.
but didn't he have a hand injury last time or something like that? Maybe those were both in the same year. But I know he hasn't exactly had the best luck in training camp. So for him to come in and have an opportunity to really impress here, and I'm sure he's got a chip on his shoulder, only getting a 1-year deal worth $900,000. Like that's a sign from the Ottawa Senators, kind of where you're at. So I'd like to see him really, really impress here in this training camp and battle for that spot over Nikita Zaitsev.
You were on the right track, but not the right timing. He broke his hand in November last year. So
okay.
Yeah. So he did break his hand. You got that right, but it was in November. November 13th. He was out 6 to 8 weeks was the initial presser that came out. By the way, we have breaking news, a little signing, but we'll tell you about that right after we finish up this initial conversation. Because for me, especially because it's Toronto, wouldn't you love to see Tyler Boucher just go and just run around a little bit and get his feet under him, maybe even get a little tuck with that nice shot. But I think he's a guy who you want to see get off to a great start, and we're hoping he does, and we know that he has the talent to do it. So I'm going to be watching for Tyler Boucher in whichever game he ends up playing in Toronto. That's going to be exciting to see. You can follow along on Twitter at Sens Central and on Instagram, lockedon.senators. Of course, we're much more active on Twitter. We'll be live tweeting as much as we can. I'm on the old 4 a.m. shift, so I actually get off in time to get home, have a bite to eat. Boom, game's on at 1 o'clock. Pillsy, what time do you work tomorrow?
I'm not working tomorrow. I'm going to an engagement party.
Okay.
Shout out Jen and Cal engagement party. So I will be MIA for most of the day.
All right. Well, I'm going to try. I might come on and do a little quick postcast if something notable happens. We'll see. We'll see where the chips fall. But that's why you got to be subscribed to Locked On Senators channel. You'll find out when we go live after each and every episode, and also once we do the live streams, because those have been a hit and we enjoy doing them as well. We also want to say, once we hit 4,000 subscribers on YouTube, we are 113 away. Once we hit 4,000 subscribers on YouTube, we will be giving away a pair of 100 level tickets to the Senators' first Saturday game at home of the season against the Arizona Coyotes, which you might say, oh, who wants to go see the Coyotes? Well, you want to see a win?
And do you remember how those games went last year? They were absolute barn burners. Obviously, both of these teams are very different. Yeah, so the outcome could be different. But I think at the very least, it's going to be a fun game. Is it going to be a great battle on the ice? Probably not, but it'll be fun.
It will be. And 100 level seats, nothing wrong with that. So make sure you be a friend, tell a friend, let everyone know that they can find Locked On Senators podcast on YouTube as well as their favorite podcast platform. We'd also point you in the direction on yesterday's show if you wanted to hear more about not only the excitement from day one of camp, but the more serious topic, the black cloud hanging over this organization. But we're going to leave that be for today and just point you in that direction. All right, Pillsy, why don't you hit a quick ad, and I will tell you the Senators have signed their first member of the 2022 NHL draft class. Remember last year they gave a contract to Zach Ostapchuk?
Oh, whoa. Thomas Hamara has already signed an NHL contract.
You're right.
Nice
that was so quick.
My guy, I'm not going to let that slip by. And it was interesting. I'll get to the ad read right after this, but reading Scott Wheeler's article in The Athletic, and Hamara was poised to stay over in Europe, but then when he was drafted by the Senators and the Kitchener Rangers took a chance on him in the import draft, that really put the pieces together to be like, okay, the Sens have signed you. They believe in you. They want you playing in North America. So he came over to Kitchener. So I thought that was my inclination, and it turned out to be true. So that was a good sign for sure.
So we both hit a dash one there. You with the Bransford hand in training camp. Me was saying the first signing happened today of this draft class. But that's why we have each other, man.
Yes.
To pull each other out from the mud when we have to. And now let's tell you about who the second signing was. A little teaser, and maybe this doesn't give away much because they drafted so many, but it's another defenseman that was signed to a contract. Pillsy, tell us about our friends over at BetOnline.
Well, at BetOnline, it is the trusted online sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network, and for a good reason. All the latest odds, Totals, player performance props, and more are on BetOnline. It's your number one spot for any sports bets you want. It remains the best spot for sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. Guys, it's not just hockey. They got basketball, baseball, they got UFC, they got boxing, they got golf. Whatever your sport of gambling is, you can find it on betonline.net. They're going to get you set up for success. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. Guys, it's betonline.net where the game starts.
All right, Pilsy. Stick taps are in order for Jorian Donovan, Sens fifth-round selection from the 2022 draft. He signed his entry-level deal. We got the classic photo at Pierre's desk. Ryan Bonus, assistant GM, is also in this photo. No sign of chummies, probably bag skating some of the groups out on the practice ice, maybe the injured guys. But that's a nice little, way to go, kid. Let's see what you got this year. I think there's still a long path of development for Jorian Donovan. But again, they can send him down this year. They can send him down next year. And neither would burn a year of this deal. So it's basically a sign of goodwill that, hey, in a few years, we do see you as a part of this organization.
It's interesting to me that they decided to do that, though, because like I mentioned with Thomas Hamara, I think that was kind of a push to be like, hey, we know you're playing over in Europe, but we'd really like to get you over here. Whereas Donovan obviously is already playing in the OHL and is a North American guy. And but hey, that's obviously we're happy for the kid, and it's always nice to sign your first NHL contract. That's a good feeling for sure. So good on Donovan. But this is a very surprising move as far as I'm concerned. It's something that I didn't think would happen anytime soon, but positive news nonetheless.
Yeah, 136th overall in the draft. It's like, hey, you're not going to give that to Nordberg or
I thought it was Nordberg for sure. Yeah,
it just seems strange. But again, maybe it's one of those where he's impressed them at camp so far. But again, it just seems strange why you wouldn't wait till the end of training camp rather than the beginning.
Yeah, anyways. Or next year or whatever, right? Like it's the timing is interesting. There's no conspiracy theory here or anything like that, but it's just not the move I was expecting. I thought 100% it was Nordberg and they were going to try to get him over here after he's had a good bump up to the Allsvenskan League. Maybe they wanted to change things.
Maybe as Nordberg would say himself. Maybe. Jorian Donovan had 22 points in 64 games for the Hamilton Bulldogs last year, had 3 points in 13 playoff games, and was, at times, a healthy scratch on a very veteran Hamilton Bulldogs team that made it all the way to the Memorial Cup final, where they lost to Philip Daou and the St. John Sea Dogs. And that Bulldogs team was stacked. They had Mason McTavish and a few other really notable players there. So hopefully with those vets graduating this year, he can go down and really take a step in the right direction. But the Senators, they have contracts to give out. Again, it slides. It doesn't even count once he's sent back down to the OHL. So I don't think it's going to affect them negatively, but it is a little bit of did you need to do that? Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. But does that count towards their 50 contracts or no?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I think it does if he's on the roster after the day of where the teams have to be set.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Gotcha. Yeah, because Tyler Boucher was the same way when he signed and then went to the OHL in the middle of last year. So we'll be watching you, Jorian, especially now. We know that he will be a part of the Senators' future, inking a 3-year entry-level contract. Speaking of contracts, Pilsy, a veteran who turned 35 yesterday, Derick Brassard, is looking to make this team. And watching his about 8-minute conversation with the media yesterday, I remembered how likable of a guy Derick Brassard is. He seems like he could be a perfect 13th forward to really help this locker room. And I know you love your faceoffs. This guy's always been over 50%.
Yeah, I've always been a Derick Brassard fan. I think just similar to other players, kind of the magnifying glass of how big he was supposed to be coming over in the Zibanejad trade. The Ottawa Senators, they didn't really have a number one center at that time, and it seemed like, okay, you're trading Zibanejad away, and you still didn't get a number one center in return. Seems kind of weird, but I've always liked his play. Big game brass. He showed up in the playoffs. I think he's one of those guys that he may not wow you, but he also, you don't see him doing too many bad mistakes or anything like that. Like he's a veteran guy. He's going to keep the mood in the locker room light. He's a part of the Francophone community, which is great. I saw that the other guys, Joseph, Thomas Chabot,
and Gannett.
Maxence Gannett, they all went out with him for his birthday. So you love to see that.
Supply and Demand, by the way, elite restaurant. That's where they were. Elite.
Is happy birthday a Bonafette?
Bonfette.
Ah, I was close. It was right there.
You put a little Espanol in it, eh?
Yes, I'm also fluent in Spanish, so that's where that all mixes together there.
The La Brigade guys are going to have a ball with that one. They're joining us on Behind the Blog tomorrow. We've also got Sens Chirp coming up. But with Derick Brassard, it's pretty much similar, and not saying they're the same magnitude of players, although they both wore number 19 in Ottawa, but where Jason Spezza went from like a very offensive player, young in his career, even towards the middle. And then he realized, like, to stick in this league, I love the game of hockey. I want to play as long as I can. I'm going to have to become a more defensive-minded player, and I'm going to have to add elements to my game that maybe takes away from my offensive numbers, but then will allow me more success to get more games. And he said 49 games until 1,000 is definitely on his radar as a goal this year. I think he makes this team. I think he gets a contract. I really, really do. And you look, it was tough last year. The way he described it, and again, it's not making excuses. It's just reporting facts that he suffered a shoulder injury in the middle of last year. Okay. And he said he never really bounced back from it. You compound that, and this is me adding, he didn't say this, but you compound that with getting traded after you recover from the injury. Like, he didn't play from December 8th, he missed a month, came back and played one game and got hurt, and then missed another month.
Yeah.
So, like, he played one game from December 8th till February 9th. And then he missed another 2 weeks and then didn't play till the 26th, Pilsy. So it was kind of an off and on middle of the season for Derick Brassard, but he had started out so well before that injury. So I'm going to take you all the way up to December 8th. 11 points in 18 games, +7, averaging 13 and a half minutes on a pretty bad Flyers team. I guess they were still around 500 at that point, but I still think Brass has a little gas in the tank. Now, I don't think he's going to be a guy who comes in here and blows the door down and gets power play time like he did in his first stint, but we're competing with Dylan Gambrell here, and I think that Brassard has a real chance to push him as the fourth line center on this team.
Yeah, I think so too. And it'd be great to sign him just because then you get two different flavors for your fourth line center, right?
Yep.
Like you get Gambrell, strictly defense, low event guy. And then if you want to mix it up, you can throw Brass in there to pump up the offense a little, get a little more skill going there and some veteran experience. So I think it would be a good yin and yang for that fourth line center. I think Casti could play fourth line center, but I don't think there's anything wrong with giving Casti another year in Belleville. So
he could also learn a lot from Derick Brassard.
Yeah, definitely. So I think of the PTOs, Brassard has the inside track over Dal Cole for sure.
Oh yeah, well those two were on and off together on a line yesterday at practice. There was that scrimmage as well. Apparently, it took one shift for Giroux, Stützle, and DeBrincat to score a goal.
Wow.
Wild. I get the little hiccups here, trying to mute the mic and get those out of the way.
Battle through. Here we go.
I got a battle. This is my flu game right now. Why don't we hit a quick break and we'll get back and show you the lines from yesterday and a couple interesting X's where guys were moving around, and I've got a theory of a couple injured guys who are going to fill those, not in the NHL, but prospects that are worth noting. Stay tuned. All that coming up on Locked On Senators, wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Pillsy, I'm back from the hiccups, and here we are discussing line combinations at Ottawa Senators practice. Just to get it out of the way, the goalies are the same. I don't think we have anything to discuss there, except we want to see Sogard and Mando take a step forward in these preseason games from what we saw at the rookie tournament. I think Talbot will probably play about 2 preseason games, do you think? And maybe get Forsberg in 3?
How many preseason games are there?
There's actually quite a few. I want to say there's
7
8 or 9.
Wow.
They're playing a lot of preseason games this year. Why don't you tell me?
Past years.
Yeah. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8.
They have
That's a
4
lot.
straight against Montreal. If the
Correct. They do,
count,
but
that's
two of them
crazy.
are
Wow.
in Newfoundland, or one's in Newfoundland and one's in New Brunswick.
Right. That's awesome. I'm glad they're going to Newfoundland. That's sweet.
Yeah. Well, you need Josh Norris in that lineup. I think for those last games, they're going to have pretty much the full team.
Yeah. So that's going to be awesome for the people out there on the Rock, that they're going to get to see the full lineup there.
And Ottawa and Montreal don't play in the regular season until December, I believe. I think it's like just before Christmas. So you know what? Let's get a couple high event, like high intensity preseason games right before the regular season begins. So I think that's a great way to start the season out there. But yeah, how many games would you give Talbot out of the 8?
Yeah, I'd say 2. Yeah.
Okay. For me, it'd be like kind of one in the middle, like whether it's the Winnipeg game or later on that weekend. Next weekend, they play a back-to-back against Toronto and Montreal before going out east. And I probably give Forsberg 2. And then the other guys, a game and a half. And then Fladell, if he wants to play a half a game, maybe give him a little bone. I don't know. Catches backwards. But other than that, he seems like a good dude. So we'll get everyone in the mix there. But up front, I think that's where it's really exciting to see how much depth and talent they have, and how we're arguing about the 5th and 6th line right now instead of what we used to do, which is like, who the heck's playing on the second line?
Can Chris Tierney be a second line center? That was one of our headlines, Ross,
Legit.
at the start of last season.
The answer? No. Here was how training camp lines were running through yesterday, thanks to our friend Ian Mendez with The Athletic. Great article, of course, as always, from Ian and Stick Taps. He was the one who asked Drake initially and was like setting the tone for the press conference yesterday, and just trying to get answers. As we go on, Norris, Tkachuk, Batherson, all together, top line. Stützle, DeBrincat, Giroux, Pinto, Mott, and Joseph. Gambrell, Kelly, and Watson. All right, that's more or less what we expect opening night to look like. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Brassard, Howrluck, and Dal Cole is the 5th line. And I kind of understand where they're going with this one, just getting a few veterans where if you need to plug and play a guy in the 3rd or 4th line for a couple games, I think Howrluck's probably your guy to come up from Belleville, and a guy who you're not afraid to put on waivers. You probably won't get claimed, and you're like, and maybe that's why you paid him a few extra bucks. Didn't he make like a 1 point something? Was he in the 1.1s, or did he sign? No?
I'll double check right now, but I don't think he got into the.
No, I got it right now. No, you're right. He got the Buffalo special, the $750K. One-way deal, though, so he's making that in the 170 in the minors. All right. I'm bamboozled there anyways. Not
bamboozled.
To say.
Word of the day.
Word of the day. Word of the day? All right,
Yeah,
we're doing word of the day this year. Bamboozled today. Brassard, Howrluck, and Dal Cole. And then this is where it gets interesting, and I'm going to ask you to fill in the blanks on this, because we've got Kastelik and Soko played together. Hopefully no bear fights in Sens training camp. But then Crookshank and Boucher, who looked awesome at the rookie tournament together, kind of playing off each other. Couple buzzsaws out there. I have my theory of who's going to jump in here. Who do you see fitting in with these two guys?
Well, essentially, Ross, this is probably going to be the top 6 for Belleville if we're looking at the skeletons of these two lines here. So on the left wing with Kastelik and Sokolov, I think it's got to be Victor Lodin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's where he fits in. He was electric when he came over with Belleville in the short time at the end of last season. They missed him due to an illness during the playoffs, which was really too bad. They could have used the extra firepower. But yeah, I would say Lodin is that guy that's going to be lined up with Casti and Soko.
Yeah, hopefully he's not out for too much longer. Suffered a concussion from that hit in the Montreal game, and we hope he's back sooner rather than later. And then for me, imagine this line in a preseason game. Ridley Gregg between Angus Crookshank and Tyler Boucher. Call it the LOSP special. Yeah. But man, those guys would have no problem forechecking.
Yeah, exactly. That would be a real tough line to play against. And it can't be stated enough how good Crooker looked in that rookie tournament, especially the game I had boots on the ground for in Buffalo. He was the star of the Sens team by far, which, I mean, low bar when they got absolutely rocked like that, but still, he looked great out there.
Yeah, he really did, eh? I mean,
Yeah.
when you're expecting him, and I know I tweeted out like, "Hey, hopefully he makes the team." I think he will start in Belleville, and Troy Mann said as
Yeah.
such. But he made such a good impression, and that's all you can do with these rookie tournaments. Whereas you said the skeleton of your top six, Tyler Boucher, I think we still think ends up in Ottawa with the 67s
Yeah.
this year.
That's
But
best for him.
oh yeah,
I
but
think.
for preseason, like I need to see Ridley Gregg center these two guys. So
Yeah.
hopefully they're not out for too much longer. We believe, and Dorian said it, but I don't think we saw him yesterday. Maybe today we will. That Ridley Gregg would be skating in a non-contact jersey at practice. So hopefully it means he's close, separated shoulder at the World Juniors, and we're excited to see him get back in the lineup. Anything else interest you here? We already spoke about Brassard. Like, I guess Dal Cole, to me, he's just kind of a preseason filler. You need a certain amount of vets in every game,
Yeah.
but it's an opportunity for him too, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I liked Dal Cole. I would have liked him for last year's Ottawa Senators, though. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think he finds a spot on this year's roster, but last year he would have been a guy that could fill in. But I don't really see it. If they decide to sign him and bring him to Belleville, and if that's something that works out, I think that would be great. But out of the PTOs, Brassard's got the inside track here.
Yeah, certainly. All right, let's turn our attention to the defense. And these are the set pairs. Again, Ian Mendez, boots on the ground. Great to have him covering this team on a daily basis. Shabbat Zub, Sanderson Hamonic. I'm officially a Hamonic guy. Holden Zaitsev, Brandstrom Bernard Docker, and then Hetherington and Thompson. They played a lot together in Belleville last year.
Yep.
What can you read into this as we overreact to day one line combos?
It's tough to read into it. I think the only thing that's interesting here is that Zaitsev is that sixth defenseman, and Branny, it looks like, is on the outside looking in just based on these lines. But these are just training camp lines. I think it's going to be more telling to see what they go with in the actual games, specifically in those games against Montreal. Kind of the back half of the preseason is when we're really going to get a better idea of who's going to fit where. So, but that's the most interesting part of these D lines is the Branny Zaitsev placements.
Yeah, and I think even the Holden placements, because he said yesterday he has no problem playing the right side as well. Do you prefer having stylistically longer reach, more defensive defenseman on the right side, or that offensive puck moving guy?
Well, Holden's on the left here because he's paired with a right shot defenseman
Right.
in Zaitsev, right? But I get what you're saying. To answer your question, I'm with DJ Smith. Like, I don't like having defensemen on their offside if you can avoid it. Obviously, I think that's the most ideal situation. But if you are going to put someone on their offside, make it a guy who's not going to be carrying the puck as much up the ice and not going to be playing with the puck in the O zone as much. So Holden. And B, make it a veteran guy who already has NHL experience doing that and is comfortable doing that, and that's Holden as well. I know Brandstrom has played the right side. He's made it publicly known that he likes to play the right side. It's not an issue for him, but I think it's better if he's on the left and Holden's on the right, if they are indeed the pair that ends up happening.
Are you confident in this group?
I was about to say just a quick no right away, but it all depends on Sanderson. Like, if Sanderson can be a top four guy, I think they can ride with this group. Am I confident in them? No, still not. I think there's one more piece that needs to happen if they're going to be successful in the playoffs. So I'll go with no. I'm not quite confident in this team, but I think they can outscore a lot of their problems with that top six. And even I've highlighted the bottom six. It is a very, very formidable bottom six. And then the goaltending, having two stable veterans night in and night out, is really going to solve or like mop up a lot of the problems that Matt Murray and Philip Gustafson were not able to be stable in.
As an official Travis Hamonic fan club member, I think if the right side can get some support from those two guys at the bottom, the Bernard Docker and Thompsons, I think they might be all right. Of course, to be a real contender, they're going to have to add, but I think they can still battle for a playoff spot and be in the race later on in the season. And then maybe like this is probably music to your ears. Then you look at the trade deadline, what kind of defensemen are available. But like, if you slide Zaitsev out of that, and if Bernard Docker or Lassie Thompson, and you're betting on 2 first-round picks, so you hope eventually they can step in and be everyday NHLers and impactful ones at that. I think you're not. it's not brutal. It's definitely not as bad as the defense we've seen here over the last few years.
That's the thing. It is better. I just think Bernard Docker and Thompson right now, if they play in the NHL, they're not going to be difference makers. Like, I think the key to success here, and I'm not an anti-Hamonic guy, but I think if Hamonic was on the third pair instead of being a top four defenseman, then you've got a good decor here. Like, then everything is where it should be, really. And again, it all hinges on how quickly Sanderson can transition to a top 4D in the NHL, which is not easy.
No, not easy at all. But dude, look at that left side. Like the next few years, like Shabbat Sanderson, just having two pillars there on the same side. I think that's just awesome. You look, I mean, we always go back to the team that dummied Ottawa in the Stanley Cup final, the Anaheim Ducks. Like their left side was Niedermeyer and Pronger. And you're just like, one of them's on the ice at all times with Francois Beauchemin in his prime too. And you're like, okay, you have these three guys and Zub can be in the mix there for Ottawa, hopefully if he signs a long-term extension. And it's like, everyone else just rotates in whenever they can. It doesn't matter. You have such power in those top guys. So hopefully Sanderson and Shabbat can grow into, not that Shabbat already hasn't, but hopefully Sanderson can grow in and make that a 1-2 punch that can ride with the best combos in the National Hockey League. Because, I mean, in the division, the first one that comes to mind was Hedman and McDonough on the left side. Now McDonough's gone to Nashville. So not saying it opens up a whole lot because there's still light years ahead, a few lightning strikes ahead of the Ottawa Senators in where their franchise is at. And we're going to chat with Adam Denker from Locked On Lightning coming up in a couple weekends. Stay tuned for the weekend specials. Again, like I said, Behind the Blog wraps up this weekend, and then we're going right in to the division previews. We got the Locked On Fantasy Hockey podcast and the Locked On Red Wings boys coming on, not this weekend, but next. And then the Florida Panthers, the Lightning, the entire division will be joining us right here on Locked On Senators. Any final thoughts heading into the weekend, Pills?
We got to see Matt Murray's new equipment with the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Next.
Yawn. Still boring. And like the Leafs fans are hyping it up. I mean, you're gonna.
Wow, do you see how much whiter on his pads? Sick.
I know. Yeah, like just.
He's even got his name embroidered on it.
Yeah, his style is just. It's not for me. It's not for me. So we've wrapped up the last couple shows talking about goalie equipment. So I just wanted to highlight that. Look good, play good. That's still something I believe in. I wouldn't say Matt Murray's looking too good with the new equipment. And I mean,
hard to look
good in that color. Yeah, exactly. So.
Hard to look good in yellow as well. The non-contact jersey, my final thought, and just scrolling through Twitter here, Ridley Gregg was on the ice yesterday and is on the ice today wearing that ugly yellow practice jersey that means don't hit me, but I'm Ridley Gregg. I'll probably still hit you.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. Oh, man.
All right. Have a great weekend, everyone. Again, please subscribe to the Locked On Senators YouTube channel. It helps us out quite a bit. And be a friend, tell a friend, do the same. Giveaway coming once we hit 4,000 subscribers. And thanks for all the feedback on yesterday's show. It really did mean a lot to us. And we appreciate the community here. And we want to be a big part in building that forward and in a positive light. So for Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. Have a great weekend, everyone. And we'll chat again tomorrow with Behind the Blog. This has been the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.